welcome to episode 1 of the All-Star Advocacy Podcast. I'm your host, Michael Castro. Now, our first guest is someone I consider not only a friend, but someone I also, look up to in this day and age. He's a professional baseball player who is currently in the New York Mets organization, and whose name should be synonymous with that of Colin Kaepernick and other prominent sports figures who've used their platform to speak out on issues in modern day society. And it's our pleasure to have him as our first guest, a member of our All-Star Advocacy team, Bruce Maxwell. What's going on, Bruce? How are you, man?
Hey, man. What's going on, brother? Just another day in good old Alabama, man. Another day. Appreciate you having me on here.
Yeah. You're still right now right up against, spring ball's coming up. And, we're very lucky to have you on, right as we get up to, your time, to head to spring training. So we're super fortunate to just be able to block out this, whatever time we have with you. And really get into, not only our relationship that has formed over the past year, I'd say, a little under a year, and the creation of All-Star Advocacy with athletes like you in mind. I'd love to, get right into your story and have our listeners get a behind-the-scenes look at your life, before, during, and since your claim to fame back in 2017 that, so much of us know about or have heard about, in the last few years. So if it's all right with you, let's just kind of take it back to your upbringing and discuss, some early life. What was it like growing up in Alabama, your formative years? What was that like?
I only, growing up, I only had, my two sisters and my parents. And so it was very homey, here. I'm from the country. Everything's a lot slower down here. And, we definitely didn't have what we have now. Like now, the city's grown and the population has grown. It's a little more diverse depending on where you go. But for the most part, man, where I grew up, it was country. It was slow. It was, black and white only. Like there was no any other perception. Nothing but cornfields, cotton fields out here, man. It's about as country as it can get, honestly.
Yeah. And so, that rural, area, I grew up here in the rural part of San Diego, and I feel like, there's a lot of connections to that kind of slower living, but at the same time, with the South comes, instances of racism that we, doesn't matter, what state necessarily, that's still very much alive in our history in this country. What was your, I could say, your first encounter, with that, or if you knew, that's what was happening in your childhood?
My first standout moment of legit like racism was I was at a baseball tournament when I was about 10, and we were in Coleman, Alabama, which is about 40 minutes away from where I grew up, and we'd beat the home team. We'd beat the home team for a championship, and in Coleman, Alabama, the founder of the KKK in that area of the state is from, Coleman, Alabama. And so it was very white, very whitewashed down there. And so we beat the home team for the championship of the tournament, and me and my dad are standing there accepting trophies and stuff. And there's an older gentleman standing up in the stands, and he yelled out at me and my dad because, I was the only black player on my team, and, he was the only black coach. And so he stood up and he told us, he was like, you N-words need to get out of town before we hang you guys in front of the clubhouse or in front of the courthouse. Excuse me.
And you're what age there?
I was like 10. And and my dad grabbed me grabbed my stuff, and we left. And there was not a word said on the way home. I didn't even cry. Like, I was just like, I think I was in shock, and it's like, it was in front of tons of people.
Yeah.
And nobody did anything about it. Nobody said anything to him. Nobody, backed us up, like nothing. It was just like, we got our stuff and we left, and I think that was the first time like it really set in on me. And ever since then, my eyes have been a little wider, and I've started to notice things a little more as I was getting older. I would notice, like, hidden agendas or hidden innuendos that people would say, or how they would look at me when I was like going places with my mom or whatever it is. And so I started paying attention a lot more after that moment.
Wow. So having to really, be on your toes from the age of 10 on, even when it is during what's supposed to be your happy place, right? A safe zone where you're supposed to feel like you can come, to little league and minor leagues. From that point on, did understanding that that's what you were up against in that area, is that something that really, took your safe zone away in playing ball? Or was it just something that, okay, this is part of what comes with, even it doesn't have to be walking across the street. It can be in the form of a baseball tournament that this stuff can actually happen.
I'll say this: baseball has never been a safe zone for me. I've always understood what comes with it, because ever since I was a kid, I stepped on the field and nobody looked like me. It was just a matter of when it was going to be directed towards me. And so baseball's never really been a safe zone. Like, I love playing baseball, but safe zone is definitely not what I would call it. It was more of like, I just enjoyed doing what I was doing. I enjoyed the game itself. But from that point on, I knew that as I got older, seeing how at that age I was already the only, African-American kid on my team, I knew as I got older, it probably would change. I was hoping it would, but if there's not multiple guys on my team or teams I'm playing against at 10, I didn't think there would be any more at 15, 18, at 21. Like, so I just kind of I try to brace myself as best as I could for it, honestly.
Right. And so knowing that, taking your way through high school and then junior college, right, is when you started gaining kind of some more notoriety and, your game, you were turning heads in your play.
D3.
In D3. I'm sorry about that. D3. That's when, things really started picking up and you were starting to get noticed. And all the way through, your playing career, was that always something that you had kind of, not necessarily over your shoulder, but something to always think about, that it didn't matter what level that you were ascending, that you were climbing up, that's just something that was, par for the course, for lack of a better word?
Yeah, it comes with the game, man. Like, I tell people all the time, playing ball out west or playing ball up north, a little different. Probably have more people that look like you, probably more of a melting pot of people. But down in the South, man, it's pretty regular to have only, one black kid, maybe two on a team, or have an all-white coaching staff. And so when I went to college, I went to a predominantly white college, very wealthy college in Alabama. And no matter the geography of where, the location of our college, we still made up a very, very, very small amount, minority on campus. Anybody that wasn't white, honestly, we made up a small minority, including, foreign exchange students and everything. And so it was, like I said, I kind of got used to it, which is sad to say, but it was like, no matter how well I played or how bad I played, I was still going to get it. Like, I had racial issues at college, on and off the field. I dealt with those in private. And so, it's not been on my radar, but it never surprised me, if that makes any sense, when it did happen.
Right. Right. And I guess when you look at you're back home now, preparing for this next 2021 season, home in Alabama, but given, and we'll really touch into this in the next, here in the next few minutes, but over the last few years, obviously you have family back home, you have your mom and your sister, but you've also spent some time outside of the country in the past few years. So my question is, what does home look like now? What is your definition of home or community even? Coming from that as your, upbringing, and that's what you've had to, really understand is out there. What would your definition of home look like?
So where I currently live is about 20 to 25 minutes away from where I was raised. So it's a little different demographic out here where my family lives. It's a lot more country. It's a lot more like what we call old money is where we're at. Private golf clubs, bigger houses, all that stuff. But no matter where I go, dude, I'm always attentive. Like my head's always on a swivel. No matter, there's still places here that I don't go. There's still places here where, like, even when I go to my sister's like high school basketball game, she's a coach. Depending on where we go to plays, depending on how I dress, like I've worn my cowboy boots and a camo jacket multiple times on away games because we were going somewhere that was very country and very kind of out there. And so I didn't want to really draw any unnecessary attention to myself. And so it's home looks exactly like it did when I was here. City's just a little bigger. There's a little more attractions like, Top Golf, Dave and Buster's, all that stuff. But honestly, it hasn't changed much.
Got it. Yeah. Some things stay the same. And so, we'll get right into, through your formative years, through your ascension in your career, that got you to the major leagues, and you were playing for the Oakland Athletics as a catcher, in your, your early years. And as many of our listeners may or may not know, there was a clear turning point that you made the decision to be an athlete advocate and to use your platform as a catcher in Major League Baseball to shed light on, some issues. And, we'll get right into, your choice. But, I remember you speaking of the exact moment that you decided you were going to do something with your platform. And it took place at a rally in Huntsville, where you grew up, where, the former president called out, Kaepernick, by name, and lots of NFL players, you sons of bitches, and, said everybody kneeling, for the flag, should be fired, from the NFL, for lack of a better word. Can you speak to, kind of that point in your life? You're in the major leagues, and having grown up, knowing, your lived experience. Can you just share, what you felt at that time, during that time?
I felt rage. I felt disappointment. I felt helplessness. I spent my whole life, if you talk to any African American athlete, that's not from, I guess, well, hell, it doesn't even matter where you're from. Personally, a lot of African American athletes, I guarantee their parents taught them to just keep their head down and keep working. Don't engage in negativity, don't engage in altercations, and that's kind of what I was raised around. And when that rally happened in my hometown, and I was in California, to see the amount of people that cheered for him and voted for him and rooted for him, and basically gave him reassurance that what he was doing was right, it broke my heart, honestly. To take pride in where I'm from, even with my experiences, to take pride in where I'm from, and I represent the 256 down here, and to see that and to see basically people support a guy who's very inhumane, who doesn't even treat his neighbors like people. It was disgusting, and it was my tipping point. I addressed my team, I addressed my front office before the game that I did take a knee, and I gave them my reasonings. I gave them, what I was doing, and I gave everybody the opportunity to object, any and everybody. If they feared for themselves or their family or their career, whatever it is, I gave them the freedom to object, and then I wouldn't do it, and nobody did, and so that led to my stance. And if I had to do it again, I would. I would just be more prepared for the things that came afterwards. I thought I was prepared, but I wasn't. I don't really think you can prepare for something in that magnitude that I received in the next couple of years. And so, yeah, man, that was a very interesting moment in my life and my career.
Yeah. For those of us who were, watching at home, during that time, just everything happening and staying, looped in with what's happening with sports figures, really, those that, so many eyeballs are on to make a stand at that time, really speaking up against the mistreatment of, people of color at the hands of police, and to see that insensitivity to that, just speaking up about it and saying, this is not right. Let's talk about it. Now with where we're at, and I would say how the past 8 months to a year has really played out, coupled with how January 6th, we're not even a month out, how that unfolded. I guess my next question is, what are your thoughts on, what you stood for in 2016, and here we are in 2017, and here we are in February of 2021. What is the shift? What would you feel is, where can we look at where that was and where we are at now as a country?
As a country, I mean, getting Trump out of office was, a big step in itself. We had record numbers when it comes to African American votes, Black and brown people in general, and so that's a step in the right direction. But I mean, I think a lot of people don't understand how far we have to go. And end of the day, as a country, this takes everybody. It takes everybody to look themselves in the mirror and see what they're doing wrong or see what they're doing right when it comes to humanity. We're not even talking about color. We're talking about humanity. I mean, just in general, I use these phrases all the time. I was like, God created one race and humans created racism, I mean, end of the day, it really is. We are the downfall of our own creation, on this planet. And until we get people, regardless of what you look like, regardless of where you're from, until people start caring about each other and caring about their well-being, caring about just their life in general, this isn't going to get any better. It's going to get way worse before it gets better. I do feel like now the way our country was founded is really starting to come to the forefront, because so many people have tried to suppress the truth and reality of that. But now, especially after the storming of the Capitol and the lack thereof, repercussion and police presence and violence, it's really starting to dawn on people that this is how our country was formatted to be. It's formatted to protect the ones in power, which majority of the ones in power are of Caucasian descent, and it's designed to protect the wealthy. And they do anything and everything, even if it means take from the middle class or the poor, to protect those type of people, regardless of the damage, regardless of the sacrifice. And that's how our country was founded, man. Our country was founded on lies, was on rape, was on murder, thievery, you name it. I mean, you name it. We can continue on and on. But that's literally how our country was founded. The guys who signed the our declaration and everything, like, when the start of the creation of our nation was signed by men who owned slaves. It was signed and agreed upon that black men were seen as not even a full person. Right. And it was just, as old as that is, when it comes to time, it's still relative to this day. You see, I mean, it's amazing that it's taken this long for this to come to the forefront, but now it's starting to really, really it's starting to be in a thing. And I was actually talking to my mom about this today. I was like, with the storming of the Capitol, there was a cop. I think it was one cop, maybe two. I'm not really sure, but they were killed by
during the siege.
Yeah. So there was one or two cops. I think it might have been one, but I'm not, like I said, don't quote me on that. But there was at least one cop that died during that siege. And I haven't seen that on the news at all. And I watch the news every day. And I was like, so it's like, depending on who does the wrongdoing.
Sure.
It depends on if it's on mainstream media or not. I mean, literally, I haven't heard a thing about the raid since like 3 or 4 days after it happened.
Yeah.
Like, it's been gone. Like, I'm hearing about everything else in the world, when stock market, GameStop, all this stuff. Right. But like, I haven't heard anything about it. There's no mainstream media. I said, but you run out there and have a Black Lives Matter protest in Washington or in Louisiana or in California, right, and it's on the news for 2 weeks.
Man.
And they're trying to find the most negative things to find about these people. I was like, but we had our own people, their own people that stormed a federal building, not the library. Like, they stormed the Capitol. And, true or not, supposedly incited by our former president, but true or not, these people were allowed to walk out of the Capitol with death on their hands, with stolen property on their homes, from the government.
Right.
Like, from the government. I've seen more destructive behavior in a wrongful search in an airport of a person who looks suspicious, quote unquote. I was like, I've seen more force from something like that at 8:30 in the morning than I did on any point in time in that raid of the Capitol. And so it's just amazing to see people's takes and see how people respond to that, but also see how the media shapes things. And if it wasn't clear, it is now. Like, who our media and our government is, in our country in general, is looking out to protect and to help when needed. And it's amazing. Actually, it's disgusting, but it's amazing.
It is. And I mean, there's so much to unpack there.
Oh yeah.
There is so much going on. However, like you said, what is reported, what is chosen to be reported on, and also, the argument, if we're going back to specifically the argument against kneeling for the flag, no one, in NFL circles, for that matter, for baseball, for many of the leagues out there, the argument that it was disrespectful to the military or, to law enforcement or first responders or whatever that was, about, well, you can just take January 6th and that argument goes out the window, because, I mean, we were seeing live footage of the flag being used to, like you said, injure.
And
and hurt.
To break it down into context too, I want people to hear this. The people that stormed the Capitol were basically throwing a fit because they lost. Okay, so I need that. I've been telling people this every time I talk about this. Like, you got to put it, if you want to compare things, you have to put those things into context. So we have Black Lives Matter protesters getting shot with rubber bullets in the face, getting maced, getting wrongfully arrested, beaten, if not killed, by our own police force for marching down streets, holding up signs and protesting for our lives. Okay, for our lives and the lives of our family and the lives that were lost before us.
Protesting.
You know, yeah.
Valid.
I was like, and we have a raid and siege of the Capitol, which is like one of the most secure buildings supposedly in our country, in the world.
Supposedly.
And we have proof of police collusion. They walked in, they stole property from our government. They stole property, and there was one death, maybe two, that I've seen at the hands of this siege, and you don't even hear about it. Like, the siege of the Capitol was because the people that supported Trump were mad because they lost. They lost an election, a legitimate election. They decided, you know what, we're gonna steal back our country because of a loss.
Yeah.
I was like, and I guess that's my thing. Like, we're talking about essentially sore losers here. If you want to talk about sports, like, we're talking about sore losers acting out and throwing a hissy fit, like my mom calls it, a hissy fit.
With real.
I was like, yeah, and I was like, so I said, so, and if you bringing up, sports and stuff, you have this whole picture of the media that always paint African American athletes to be so outraged and so angry and all that stuff. Like, I was actually just having this conversation the other day. They always highlight when Serena Williams or Venus Williams is cussing at the line judge or whatever it is. And they always paint a picture and always have these memes that come out, this and the other. You can't tell me that African American athletes on any court, on any field, you can't tell me we're the only ones that get frustrated and cuss at a judge or umpire or a referee or whatever it is while we're doing it. I said, but in that same context,
the spotlight
why
gets on.
Why are we always labeled as unprofessional, and why are we always getting reprimanded, when it happens? Because when it happens to other types of players, other race players, especially white players, it's because they're passionate. It's because they play hard. It's because they really care about what they're doing. This, that, and the other. I said the mainstream picture of African Americans is so skewed. It's like we literally can't do anything outside of being perfect without getting labeled in a bad light. And so it's frustrating, honestly, because, even us, like, I have to watch what I say. I have to watch how I carry myself, all these things. I was like, because I could get that bad label, and I have in the past before, for being too passionate, to being too serious, this and the other. I said, but, that's what we have to deal with, and then, and then when you're going back to politics and what happened, it's like these people got the freedom to literally walk inside of the Capitol building with bad intentions, carrying around zip ties, like police zip ties. Yeah. Can't just go buy those things, okay? Like, those are handcuffs. And they had the worst intentions of taking hostages. They wanted Pelosi's head.
Right.
Like, and they made it known. Like, it wasn't like a secret. Like, and so to see in our country that being, not going to say supported, but definitely not reprimand.
Walking out, being able to walk out of that entire ordeal,
dude, there was a lady
untouched, and it's not that we're wishing harm on anybody, but
no.
you know, the juxtaposition that you're talking about is everything that you were kneeling for. Is why the difference in treatment? Why does one part of our society have to, you know, bury their children and their family members when really it's, you know, we're seeing more and more, you know, the dichotomy in this place is really embedded in protection of.
Oh, dude, it's hard to watch, it's hard to see, and it's hard to have conversations with people about this, especially from my end, because like I've grown up around it, but at the same time, it's like I'm not gonna say our line of work, but any type of professionalism, you don't want to piss off the people who are in charge of, you know, what you're doing, you know, and you never know how people are going to react. And it's something that we have to, you know, kind of be cautious about, you know, I'm not talking just about baseball. I'm just talking about life. But you know, to see that, it really enraged me. Like I had to go to the gym. Yeah. Like I had to go to the gym and run and work out because I was so outraged that on mainstream TV, we have a raid of the Capitol, and they have police escorting a lady that was part of the Capitol down the stairs so she didn't fall. Like, and I'm just like, and you know, you saw it all over Twitter, you saw it all over Instagram. Like everybody, professional athletes from all over, were like, everybody already knows what would happen if those were Black Lives Matters, right? If those were black people, and it's true. Like you ain't even gotta, you don't even have to tweet it out. You don't even have to, you know, send it out. Like it's true. Everybody knows that if those were black people, there's no shot in anybody's world that they even get on the, like, near the White House nor the Capitol.
Well, let's even talk about, you know, going back to, because I mean this is what's happening, right? This is really what's happening in modern day. But to tie that into kind of the blowback that you received for, again, peaceful healing, you know, the hateful messages, the death threats on your life and your family members, you know, for taking a stand, right, in reverence, in you know, complete you know, silence, not being bombastic, but your act alone and what came your way during those years, you know, the year following, you know, and how dark things got, you know, when you know, if we're going, you know, turn back the clock to 2017, obviously we can't Monday morning quarterback it now, but when you were getting the brunt of that treatment by, you know, all members of society or social media or what have you, you know, did you know at the time, or did you realize that, you know, I'm living history of what's happening right now? And I guess the second question would be, did you feel like you had to second guess? I know you said it was the right thing and you would do it again, but were there times where, you know, because of such blowback, you were thinking, man, you know, what have I done, in a sense?
The living legend part of that first question, hell no. I just, how I saw what I did was I was doing what was right. I was doing what was right by my family. I was doing what was right by my friends. And I was doing right by our people that don't get a camera in their face every day. You know, the normal, hardworking, you know, family members that, you know, get their kids or themselves, you know, wrongfully abused and or killed by you know, abuse of police or wrongful intel by police or whatever you want to call it. That's who I was standing up for, because at the end of the day, I firmly believe that if the human race doesn't take care of the human race, we're going to kill off our own existence. I mean, and it's, you can go at this so many ways, you know, global warming, our environment, everything. Like everything right now is in shambles around the world when it comes to taking care of our planet because of humans, because of the human race, just in general, the carelessness of their neighbor, of our world, this as a whole. At that time, no, I didn't think about history. I didn't think about any of that stuff. I was just thinking about standing up for what I believed in.
Right.
And if it took something as extreme as what I did, then I was going to do it, because at the end of the day, I've never been afraid to speak my mind. I've never been afraid to defy the odds. But I've also never been, I've never feared the repercussions of standing up for what I believed in, because if I have confidence in myself and what I'm doing, there's nothing outside of myself and my beliefs that can deter me from doing what I deem is right, what I feel like is right. And I've always been like that, even as a kid. And so if, doing what was right, kind of exiled me, then I'm cool with being alone. Like, I'm totally fine with that. I actually work better a lot of times. And so what really put me in a dark space, and, and most people do, I almost took my own life, a time or two, shortly after all of this. I wasn't prepared for the amount and the severity of the darkness that I was receiving. I didn't expect people to track down and threaten my family. I didn't expect people to be as vulgar and be as dark. Like, I expected people to call me the N-word and threaten to hang me and stuff. Like, I got that in a regular life, but the severity and the vulgarity of the messages and the hate that I received was so dark, and there was so much of it. Like, I was like, you know what? I feel like my family would get a break if, I took my own life and I disappeared, and so, yeah, man, it was a dark time, and thankfully, I had the right people around me. I did have, I think I was a hot topic, a hot button. And so, for a couple of years, I didn't hear from damn near anybody in the MLB, like supposed, friends and teammates. Didn't hear from anybody. Most of my support came from guys that were already out of the game, guys that are mentors for me, big brothers to me. And so I've talked to very, very, very few that were still in this game, still in the game today. But, supposedly we were homies. And I got left out to dry. And I'm not just talking about, players of color. I'm talking about players of all. Like, like I said, supposed friends of mine, guys that I came up through the ranks with for years, played alongside them for years. And, a lot of people, I feel like they steered away from me because I was a controversial topic in our game. And so I used that time, to really tap into who I was and what I wanted to be, what this means, what's the path that I'm supposed to be traveling down. And, obviously, with you guys, with All-Star Advocacy and, what we're doing, even the small portion of what we're doing and building towards, I feel like this is the path that was chosen for me. It needed something as big as what I did and what's going on in the world right now for it to be shown, and to for me to believe that, this is my path. So it's been an interesting road.
Yeah, man. Road. And I mean, that's what I'd love to get into next, right? Is, since that time, you've been playing abroad. You've been playing in Monclova, Mexico, right? And, I'd love to just ask, because, that's how kind of you tie into the San Diego community is, you were playing abroad, and, around May, June of last year, when, the height of the protests were going on here in the U.S., we reached out and we connected, you and I, over social media, purely on, I stand with you and your story, and I'm here. I'm rooting for you at whatever capacity. And it just so happened that, I've got family who lives in Mexico, and I would just wanted to extend, that connection, and hoping you were doing great playing there. And very organically, the conversation went that, at the time, your current, agent, Lonnie Murray, she was running her agency here out of San Diego, out of the North County area. Has since, over this past year, moved to Arizona. But just in that instance, learning about your time playing abroad and living abroad, really, can you speak on what that time gave you in terms of outlook on, American culture, or, just in your experience, your growth? How did that, really affect your thought process?
It did nothing short of enhance everything in my life. The time in Mexico gave me almost a reset of everything. Honestly, the culture, the personal side of things, and also just it allowed me to relax and play baseball. Everybody, when I got down there, knew my story, knew my bio. They didn't care. And that was one of the most refreshing things that even to this day, that keeps me going back there. I have a home there and in Monclova, Mexico, excuse me. And just the way people treated me down there and treated all of us Americans, foreigners, they treated us with respect. They treated us with open arms. They respected us as players, but they also respected us as people. And just the overall want of us there was amazing. Our ownership, our coaches, our city, they basically entrusted us with the heart and soul of that city. And they rode with us, man, ride or die, lose games, win games, whatever. And down there, I found my love of baseball, the reason why I started playing when I was a child. It reiterated, plan for a city, plan for a team, not only plan for yourself. It reminded me of the why I do and who I am, because, I do tap into the community down there. I do go and help little league teams and go watch little league games, because kids, send me
You're a
messages.
part of the community, man. They welcomed you with open arms, and it's been
exactly
organic.
Yeah, and I got the opportunity and I made the most of it, man. It's a place that I'll always be able to call another home for me. And when it did, honestly, it did show me how different our society is, in the States. And it was disgusting to go down there, not know anything, not know any Spanish or the culture or anything, and to be treated better than your own people treat you is something that I'll never forget. It'll be something that that'll never really leave my mind. To walk into a different country, supposedly a third world country, and yes, I'm a professional athlete, but I haven't received any type of disrespect or racial profiling or nothing
Based on your skin color or your hair texture. It's
nothing.
how you
and
play the game, right?
And it's like I drive an American car. I don't look like anybody else. I do speak Spanish, but it's not great. But I never had to worry about people trying to manipulate a situation to target me. I didn't have to worry about going into a wrong part of town. I never had to worry about, the hidden agendas of people. Everybody has hidden agendas. It just, especially when you're an athlete, people have hidden agendas. It doesn't matter what you look like. It's just about what the person wants. But I never once questioned it when it comes to the people that I was always around. They never used me. They actually helped us a lot with a lot of things, and they didn't even have to do it. It was just because they respected us, and they felt the fact that we were foreigners and that we probably didn't know the city or know many people. So they took it upon themselves to reach out and help us when we didn't even ask. But they knew it. They put their time and their effort into making us call that place a home for whatever the time being was. And that was something that, that doesn't even happen in the States. Yeah. It doesn't even happen half the time when you move state to state. Like, we're not even talking like out of the country to in the country. We're talking about, moving from state to state, man. Like, I moved from Alabama to Arizona when I was 22 years old. And I had one neighbor that came over when I was moving in and introduced himself and was like, hey, listen, this is my job. I run a car service, like just, a private car service. If you ever need any help when it comes to, finding places to eat or whatever it is, just let me know. Like, here's my number. We're homies. That was literally like the one person that in my 6 years of living in Arizona that I didn't previously know that extended a help for me. And that was in 2013, and that's just going from Alabama to Arizona.
Yeah.
And so for me to go from California or the United States to Mexico and to feel more love and more appreciation as a person, just in general, it's amazing and it's disgusting at the same time.
It really is a shift in culture, man. And I mean, I don't want to sound too biased coming from, Mexican heritage, but there is something to say for the warmth and the inclusion and, it's sincere. It's, you're here on our soil and we welcome you. I don't know what it is about it, but it's, I'm just so glad, man, that was, really what allowed you to fall in love with baseball again and fall in love with the game and, looking at how things were, if we're going back to this summer, how things really played out. You were watching, from kind of the outside in, quote unquote, living, in Mexico. But let's just go back to, how the reactions this past summer among every pretty much sports franchise coming to a standstill in the aftermath of the racial protests, and really, kneeling across all sports. You couldn't find a sport that, that wasn't happening. We have a local team here in San Diego, a local soccer team, right? San Diego Loyal, with Black Lives Matter on their jerseys. Now, what is it, do you think, that clicked or, in 2021 will be clicking that didn't click back then? We've talked about leadership at the top, but what do you think it was that, this past fall, really registered in folks' minds with your initial stance to speak out on those issues?
In the world of baseball, I honestly think that they felt like they had to say something. I will say that because the MLB was, if not one of the last professional organizations to organize and to facilitate some sort of protest about equality after the George Floyd incidents. The NBA was the first. The other professions are NBA, the NFL. They're predominantly African American, so it's a little easier for them to get together and do things kind of the way they want to, and they did it on a heartbeat. But the MLB, man, I honestly, I didn't know what to feel at the time. I really didn't. I'm very, very elated that the conversation is being had and the emotions and the action has happened, because it does need to happen. It does need to be addressed on all platforms, because this is the country that we live in. In this country, people hold athletes to a higher platform most times than the president, and so if we're going to talk about equality and if we're going to take a stand for humanity, it needs to be on all platforms and all sports and all facilities, and it needs to constantly be an effort from us all to be better people and to be better humans. And It was an interesting summer to see the things unfold on the baseball field. I have my own personal opinions about, the things. Again, they're personal. So, but at the end of the day, I was very excited to see the MLB and the players get together, however they did, to say something, to make a stand, and I hope it continues. I hope the effort from these clubs, individually and collectively, continue to reach out to your African American players and to find out what they need or what they can do to help this situation and to help either the individual or the community that they're from. And it takes all of us, and hopefully the effort continues and the genuineness continues. I hope that none of these things across any of these platforms are publicity stunts. Because at the end of the day, if we can't care about our neighbor, we're all doomed anyways. So it's a little deeper meaning for me and for a lot of people, because we grew up in areas that had affected our families and affected our outlook on life, and so I take it very personal. I'm not one to do things and post it everywhere. Like, it's not one of those things. It's not why I do. I've never been that person. And so, like, it's sometimes a little awkward for me to talk about it, because I just like doing it, and I could care less if anybody knows or not, because the person that I'm helping or the family that I'm helping knows, and that's all that matters to me. And if you can make a difference in one kid's life, maybe he'll make a difference in two. It's just about giving back, man. It's not about publicity. It's not about, it's one thing when we're talking about sunglasses or talking about shoes or whatever it is like that. But when we're talking about people, I mean, it's about the person you're helping. And I've never known a person to help somebody, genuinely help somebody, and them not feel like refreshed about it or great about it. I've never helped somebody and felt like they were a burden to me.
Right.
I felt great about it, because at the end of the day, how we treat each other is how we survive, and how we survive is how we flourish. And it doesn't matter how much money you have. It doesn't matter what kind of company you belong to or where you grew up or whatever it is. It doesn't matter what kind of cars you drive. If end of the day, like, if you're a shitty person, if you're an asshole of a person or an asshole of a boss, whatever it is, at some point in time, you're either going to get voted out or your company's going to fold. Or, if you're a shitty person, people might take advantage of you. They might steal things from you. They might damage your home. They might kidnap you. Might whatever. Like, there's so many things. Like, if you're a negative person, you attract negativity.
Yeah.
I'm a firm believer in that. And so it's just, we have to get back to the little things, man. And, like I said, I hopefully across these platforms, all these things that are going on, hopefully it makes a difference. Hopefully it makes a splash, a very large splash in the world, and it's contagious. And we continue to work, for years to come to see that equality, to see that reform, and to progress as people,
Yeah, man. I mean, I feel like we are ripple effects, and you don't know, sometimes what stance. I mean, here I am in San Diego, California, and at the time, you had no idea who we were, what we were. However, you had such an integral part of it. And I think going back to what you were talking about, touching on affecting the lives of the next generation, that's what this podcast is for. It's to get to the youth, high school age kids, even college age or young adult athletes, and let them get some inside baseball as to your lived experience. And so in that, I guess my next question would be, we understand what the stigma has been, but is there a way that we can really work to make sure it doesn't depend on what sport you're aspiring to play, which sport, it's okay to be outspoken on issues, because I play XYZ sport, or, no, I'm going to have to take a different route because unfortunately this other sport hasn't evolved quick enough with the times for me to feel comfortable doing that. What do you think about where we can see, maybe sports in the next 5, 10, 15 years, and that stigma being, hopefully a thing of the past?
All I can say is we'll see.
Yeah.
That's all I got, man. I have hope that the stigma changes. But like I said, it's the way you treat, your business, your people. If they continue to treat their employees, players, whatever you call it, coaches, they continue to treat us like numbers and don't truly, I'm not going to say give a damn, but if they don't truly invest in who's wearing their jerseys and their team colors, then they'll never really be able to reach out and to express their authenticity of actually giving a shit, to be completely honest with you. But like I said, I don't know. I have hope. That's all you can really have, because at the end of the day, we can only control the certain things that we do. But I do hope that stigma does change, especially in the game of baseball, because I don't feel like you're doing a service to your players and coaches if they're uncomfortable with standing up for what they believe in. I really don't, with fear of losing their jobs or being reprimanded in a way that prevents them from getting jobs down the road. So.
Yeah, man. I think, just to close that, and we'll wrap it up here in a little bit. Before I let you go, we want to get into kind of some of the programs you're involved in at the grassroots level, to promote these things and get these, initiatives out and in communities. But just to cap on that, I do think we are at a turning point, right? Politically, we have new, administration, new leadership, and given how this past, year went, we're still, reeling with so many real world issues. I think it is a we'll see type approach, at every level of organized sports. We're seeing just a very real, visceral reaction to this last year. And we will have to see, it's up to us to do the work and be committed to the change you were advocating for 4 years ago, right? That never changes. And, for folks to be able to see that, your credibility in that's what's going to move the needle, right? It's not the masses. It's those ground swells that stick with it and stay with that determination that will get us, actual movement. And so, we'll close with, I'd love for you to tell the folks, what programs, you're involved in. You're in so many places, so many communities, right? Whether it's, a San Diego community and the civic engagement we have going on here in San Diego with our youth, or, the Leela Project. I know you've spoken very highly of them, or, any place in between. Please, let our listeners know what place you're really about in helping change.
Got you. So obviously, outside of being a part of the All-Star Advocacy Program, I'm also in direct contact and inclusion with the Leela Project. They're based out of Corona, California. One of my really good friends runs that program. Basically, what we do is we give back to the underprivileged communities all up and down the southern coast of California, whether it be school supplies for the underprivileged neighborhoods, food drives, all over LA, all over those areas. Most of them are more urban areas, but whether it be food drives, school after school programs, school supplies, whatever is in need in our communities, we raise the money to provide. And that they've been doing it for a couple of years beyond my start with the Leela Project. But my man Dominic has organized and ran that smoothly and now we're teamed up, with politicians and all these things down in the Southern California area. So that place is huge. That movement, that stance down there is very, very large. And I love to be in a part of it. I'm also a part of this company now called Now Included. It's based out of Huntsville, Alabama. It's ran by Tiffany Whitlow. She's a local graduate of one of our high schools, actually our rival high school where I went to. But we have quite a few people on board, and basically what we're doing is we're pushing the initiative and providing information in ways for those underprivileged families, or those what am I trying to say? Those minority families that don't have the same media outlets for healthcare, for vaccinations, for equal representation here in Huntsville. And so, it's still a racial issue, because, I mean, just the other day, they came out with a statistic in New York that showed that Latinos and African Americans were significantly vaccinated lower than white New Yorkers. So, but that's neither here nor there. But we work on a team, called Now Included, that provides this information, that takes these media outlets, and we make sure we highlight for these minority families, for these underprivileged families, to understand their healthcare rights, to understand their equal representation rights, to understand where they can go get these vaccines, or where they can take care of their kids for equal representation. And so that's how, that's how we do our part in the city that we grew up in. Mm-hmm. Outside of that, kind of included in that, I work with the Compound 256. It's a program, and it's also a facility here in Huntsville, Alabama, that is relatively new. It's ran by, a couple guys. I'm included in this Compound 256 that we were raised here. It's a, football, basketball, baseball, softball facility. And it's something that we've never had here in Huntsville, something ran by us, for us. And a lot of the kids that come in there are all mixed, all denominations. But basically what we do is, out of the genuineness of giving back. It's ran by one of my big brothers, Darwin Salam. He's a few years older than me, and I've always looked up to him in general as a person. But I work out there every single day, some days twice a day. And, all types of kids come in there, and we work with them. And I take time out of my day to work with them, even though it's not even my job. But we give back to these kids, and to show them, a better way of genuinely learning what they want to be great at. And so that's something that we never had. I never had that type of facility for baseball. All I had was my dad and my high school coach, and that was it. And so, being a part of a lot of things, man. I do a mentorship, like me and, my agents. We take time to mentor some of these young kids. Some of our clients, some are not our clients. But I've been, working with a few of these kids for, a couple of years now, just to help them, shape themselves as young men. All my mentorees are African American. We just had one kid get drafted last year in the COVID draft. I have, one kid that I'm super close with that goes to St. John's University up in New York. I have one kid that just committed to one of the top JUCOs in Florida. You can name it, and so it's just teaching these kids how to be young men, teaching them about the game of baseball, yes, but preparing them for real life, preparing them for the road ahead. And so I partake in these things because they're things that mean a lot to me, and kids are our future. And me personally, I love children. And to wrap this up, I tell people this. They're like, why do you love kids so much? And I was like, because when I was a kid, I didn't have anybody to look up to, outside of my father. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, for these kids to have somebody outside of their parents to look up to, and also with our platform being professional athletes, and say they personally know me and they personally work with me on these things, or they can personally call me if they need something, whatever it is. It goes a long way in somebody's life to have that secondary big brother, uncle type figure. And so, I take pride in it. And, I could care less at the end of my career. I could care less if you remember my statistics, but what I do, what I would rather hear is, regardless of what I did on the field, I was a good person. I was a good man. My mom raised me the right way. And I tell people all the time, I was like, I'd rather walk in my door and my mom be proud of who I am than what I did today in my game. Mm. And so it's just one of those things. It's what's most important to you. And for me, it's about being a good person. It's about caring about your neighbor. And it's about giving back to the same exact community and the same type of kids that you didn't have anybody to look up to. That's the main reason why I do what I do and work with who I work with. Because you guys at All-Star Advocacy, the guys at Lila Project, the people that now included, the people at the compound here, we all do what we do because we care about our neighbor and we want to create a better world. And if that's what it is, I could care less if I make $1 off of any of it, because when our time is up, that's the legacy we leave behind. So
you heard it here, folks. I mean, that was beautiful, bro. I mean, you're doing it, right? At the end of the day, you're living this experience. And whether it's, I mean, you got Alabama, you got the compound and everything you got going on there. You got West Coast, you got East Coast. You're really using your platform. And that's the biggest, takeaway from your story thus far, right? It's still chapters to be written. But, we can't thank you enough for the person you've been all throughout, meeting you and really getting to know you, and taking the time to speak with us today. Just more about these conversations that I think our youth can learn from and really understand these world issues, but how someone like yourself can be that shining light, can be that leading example, no matter international. You could be a kid, growing up in, a different country, right? And I can't thank you enough, man. And we're going to stay looped in with everything you've got going on. Obviously, we wish you the best, in camp. And, it was just dope to have you as our first guest here on the podcast. And we'd love to have you back, soon.
For sure, brother. I hope you have a good evening, dude. It was a pleasure. Like I said, we're family. So I got to go get my workout in. And so I appreciate it. Need anything, call me. If you don't need anything, you can still call me.
Awesome, man. Well, thank you, brother. Bruce. And thank you guys for listening to All-Star Advocacy Podcast. Have a great day. Later, brother.
Peace, dog.